Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Larry Bird, and Magic Johnson. What do all these players have in common? Apart from being some of the best players to ever bounce a basketball, they all have iconic finals moments. LeBron coming back from 3-1. Kobe closing Game 4 of the 2000 finals when Shaq fouled out. MJ, well, just pick one. But what if I told you there was one finals run which I think ranks right up there with these stories of absolute legend? A masterclass of skill, poise, and killer domination. Unfortunately, this final story has been overlooked in the many pages of the NBA storybook. And that's a shame, so I am going to tell you the story of the greatest finals run you have never heard of. Our story starts in the Virgin Islands with a young boy who dreamed of being a professional swimmer. However, a hurricane ripped through this boy's hometown, destroying the only Olympic pool on the island. This boy wasn't going to let that get in the way of his dreams, however, and he started to do his swimming training in the ocean instead. This didn't last too long, however, as the boy's crippling fear of sharks left him unable to continue his training, and unfortunately he had to hang up his swimming trunks. Luckily for him though, he experienced a 3-inch growth spurt, taking him all the way up to 6'5". And that summer he started to play basketball instead. Little did he know that fast forward a few years and he was about to get picked number 1 in the 1997 NBA draft to the San Antonio Spurs. Yeah, that's right, this boy was the one and only Tim Duncan. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Tim Duncan isn't known for being an absolute killer on the court. Sure, he was good, but just how dominating can someone be if their nickname was the Big Fundamental? Well, the answer to that question is pretty damn dominating. But make no mistake about it, life was not easy for him, since in the Western Conference he had to deal with the Los Angeles Lakers, just on the back of their three-peat, winning 3 championships in a row, at the apex of their powers, as well as a young Dirk, Amari Stoudemire, and Penny Hardaway. But Timmy D wasn't going to let that stop him. It's 2003. It was Tim Duncan's 6th season in the NBA, and he turned 27 that year. He was already an NBA champion after the Spurs won their first ever NBA championship all the way back in 1999, 4 years ago, defeating the Patrick Ewing-led New York Knicks. Duncan was already an established superstar, being a regular all-star and one of the best power forwards in the league. And that regular season was especially successful for Duncan and the Spurs. San Antonio had the best regular season record in the league, with 60 wins and 22 losses, with a young Manu Ginobili entering the league that year. Duncan averaged a career-high 23.3 points, 12.9 rebounds, 3.9 assists, and 2.9 blocks a game that season. That earned him his 2nd consecutive regular season MVP award, and he was named to the All-NBA First Team for the 6th consecutive time and into the All-Defense First Team 5 years in a row. Duncan couldn't be more dominating in the regular season if he tried, but it wouldn't mean much if the Spurs couldn't go all the way and win the NBA championships, as to be honest, the much more glamorous big market teams were still dominating the headlines. The Spurs started their playoff run by defeating the Phoenix Suns 4-2. It actually didn't start well for the Spurs, as they lost game 1 in overtime to the Suns, who featured Stephon Marbury, Penny Hardaway, Amari Stoudemire, and Shawn Marion that year. The Spurs won the next 2 games and then unfortunately lost game 4 before winning the next 2 to close out the series. A fun fact for that series was that Tim Duncan was the Spurs' top scorer in only game 4 when he scored 24 points. However, in game 6 he did get a quiet 15 points, 20 rebounds and 10 assists for a triple-double. However, next in line would be the Spurs' hardest challenge yet, the Los Angeles Lakers. Let's not forget, they won the championships in the last 3 seasons under legendary coach Phil Jackson and Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant, both in their absolute primes. The Lakers' confidence was through the roof, and they were determined to get a 4th championship in a row. The Spurs, however, started the series very well, winning the first 2 games at home, including a 19-point win in Game 2. But then they lost both games in LA as the Lakers tied the series at 2-2. Game 5 proving to be the crucial game in the series. The Spurs won that one 96-94, but they almost blew a 16-point lead they took into the 4th quarter. This definitely led the Lakers to have a little bit extra confidence. However, the Spurs shut that confidence right down in Game 6 as they blew out the league favourite Lakers 110-82 to close the series out in 6 games. This time Tim Duncan showed up, being the Spurs' top scorer in 5 out of the 6 games, going as high as 37 points scored and 16 rebounds in the last game of the series. In the Western Conference Finals, the Spurs collided with the local rival Dallas Mavericks. This was the Mavericks' first playoff appearance since 1988, and they were determined to make it a long one. Dallas started strong with an 113-110 road win to open the series. Duncan did score 40 points, which was the highest scoring game in that playoffs, but it wasn't enough to topple the Mavs, who were led by Dirk Nowitzki, who finished with 38. The Spurs didn't back down, however, and they went on to win the next 3 games, taking a 3-1 lead. The Mavs refused to die and won Game 5 on the road to bring it back to 3-2, but the Spurs took care of business in Game 6, winning 90-78 to close out the series and advance to the NBA Finals. This is where it gets fun. The New Jersey Nets were the Eastern Conference champions that season, returning to the finals after losing to the Lakers the previous year. Jason Kidd was the best point guard in the league at this point, and he actually finished 2nd in the MVP voting behind Tim Duncan, making this a clash of 2 of the best players in the league. New Jersey finished 2nd in the East behind Detroit, but to be fair, they only lost 2 games on their way to the finals. What NBA fans were about to witness next was one of the best individual performances in NBA Finals history. You could say it was fate, since the last time the Spurs and Nets matched in the playoffs was all the way back on April 24th, 1976. This was Game 7 of the ABA semi-finals, and the Nets actually won. The very next day, Tim Duncan was born, ready to try and get some revenge for the Spurs. So with all that in mind, Game 1 was set in San Antonio. The Nets players, however, wasn't sure if they would make it there alive, as their flight had to take 3 attempts to land due to severe weather storms. Brian Scalabrine even said that he was crying and sweating profusely on the flight. Don't worry, Brian, we still love you. The Spurs wasn't going to take it easy on them though, as they won the series opener 101-89 at home. The score was tied at half time, and then the Spurs won the 3rd quarter by 15 points, which proved to be crucial for the final score. Duncan had a relatively quiet 32 points, 20 rebounds, 7 blocks and 6 assists while shooting 11 of 17 from the field. I was being sarcastic, by the way, if you couldn't tell. That box score is anything but quiet. However, he wasn't alone, since 3 of the other starters scored in double figures for the Spurs, and Kidd had a night off, only making 4 of 17 from his field goal attempts. It started to look like the Spurs would have an easy way back to the NBA championships, but to be fair, the Nets bounced back, winning Game 2 on the road 87-85. The Nets won the first 3 quarters, entering the last one with a 10-point lead. The Spurs brought it back to a 1-point deficit with 9 seconds to go, after Steven Jackson made a 3, but later he missed a potential game winner at the buzzer. Duncan finished with 19 points and 10 rebounds, going 8 of 19 from the field. Tony Parker was the Spurs' top scorer with 21 points, while the Nets, who were led by Jason Kidd, who was very eager to make up for his Game 1 performance, scoring 30. The series then moved to New Jersey, where the Nets have only lost 1 game in this entire playoffs run. The home team definitely got the better of the Spurs by limiting them to only 9 points in the second quarter to take the lead. The Spurs bounced back with a 30-22 fourth quarter though, for a final score of 84-79. Duncan was rock solid with 21 points, 16 rebounds, 7 assists and 3 blocks to give the Spurs a 2-1 series lead. While it was a solid bounce back performance, it was definitely the Spurs' stalwart defense that grinded this game out. The Nets had to win Game 4 to tie the score in the series, And they did that by being really aggressive on the boards to secure a 1.77-76 victory. It was a close game right up until the last seconds, and Kidd made it a 3-point game by making 2 free throws with less than 5 seconds left in the game. Ginobili then missed a 3-pointer to tie the game, and the series was tied at 2 games apiece. Duncan had another phenomenal performance with 23 points, 17 rebounds, 7 blocks and 2 assists for the Spurs. The Nets now had a chance to take the series lead with their momentum, especially considering the Nets game was on their home court. But Duncan had other plans, not only by clamping up his defensive assignment Kmart, but he also scored 29 points, 17 rebounds, 4 blocks and 4 assists to give his team a 3-2 lead. The series was now back in San Antonio, where the Spurs had a chance to close it out. But things didn't start well for the Spurs, as the Nets took an early 7-point lead in the opening quarter. However, the Spurs fought back, keeping the game close for most of the time. And then Tim Duncan showed up, putting the Spurs on his back, taking off in the final quarter. They dominated the fourth, winning 31-14 to close the series out 88-77. Duncan ended this Game 6 with an NBA Finals performance 2 blocks shy of a quadruple double, as he scored 21 points, 20 rebounds, 10 assists and 8 blocks to win his second NBA championship. This won Duncan a Finals MVP trophy, averaging a fantastic 24.2 points, 17 rebounds, 5.3 blocks and 5.3 assists. Absolutely gargantuan effort. If you were to adjust that performance for today's pace, that would look like 27.6 points, 19.4 rebounds, 6 assists and 6 blocks. Looking like 2K numbers. Absurd. Right there and then, Tim Duncan became the best power forward in NBA history. And to be honest, the rest of his career just added to his legacy. And that's the story of the greatest finals performance that you probably haven't heard of. If you made it this far, leave a like and consider subscribing. I've got plenty more NBA stories to tell.